Hello, welcome to the 8th day of August 2025. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation. This is a daily live exercise that I do to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone, which can be read for free at goingalone.org. I also use the time to think about the last 24 hours and how I did with any noteworthy challenges or opportunities, either poorly or successfully, because I can learn from either, improve from either. I go over the 8 objectives of my creed and one of the principles, and I prepare for the coming day. But first, a quick hello to new subscribers to the channel. It's good to have you here. Quick note that this is a journal video, so I talk about myself, my life. I can go anywhere, have latitude to talk about anything for as long as I want. I do read and respond to comments, but not until the end. Also, I do talk about sensitive subjects sometimes, like death, so be forewarned if that's something that makes you uncomfortable. And thank you to my YouTube members and my Patreon supporters, and for everybody who watches my videos. I really appreciate both. All right, jumping right in, let's look at my notes from yesterday, the last 24 hours. I have 2 notes here. The first says, faced the real reason I left Japan, and the second note says, handled the above pretty well. What I mean by that is that yesterday I encountered a challenge that I had largely ignored for the last decade plus. Probably the main reason that I left Japan, although I disguised it and I told myself and others that the reason I was leaving Japan back in 2014 was to seek after success by starting a career in the United States, by resuming my IT career in the United States. And that was indeed true, but it wasn't the full truth. Really, what I was also doing, now that I see it clearly, was escaping the circumstance that I was experiencing living here in Japan as someone who is barely functional language-wise, can barely get by, in being socially incompetent and requiring the help of my family, my Japanese family, to get by, which was very difficult for me and remains a very difficult thing for me to address, to live with. So I left. I told everybody that I was leaving for a new job. And I forgot the real reason that I left, and maybe I never even really acknowledged it to begin with. I went back to America, and I succeeded very well at my career, fulfilled all the objectives there, raised my daughter, got to the end of my career, retired, and came back to Japan, thinking I had wrapped it all up, right? Solved the problem. And pretty soon after I got back, I started to have suspicions that there was more to the puzzle than I had told myself. This eventually came to light and surfaced as a term that I began using maybe about 2 months ago, saying gross incompetency, describing myself in very stark terms as not just incompetent, but grossly incompetent. And I did that very deliberately because it's an incompetence at a very fundamental level. It's the incompetence of a small child needing its mother. Now, it's a funny thing because that incompetence only emerges when I've got my pseudo mother around, aka my wife. When I'm on my own in Japan, it's a funny thing. This is why it's so good to do this video every day. And it's so good to do it live because it causes me to do a better job. I hadn't realized this. Though I remain incompetent when I'm alone in Japan, when I'm out in the community functioning on my own, I always get by. Even my daughter has pointed that out on more than one occasion, that she said, Dad, one of the things and remember, this is my journal video, so I can go anywhere I want. I compliment myself or share the compliments of my daughter. She said, one of the big difference between you, Dad, and so many of the other foreigners that in her circle that she knows in Tokyo, is that you, talking about me, you just go for it. You know, you don't let your incompetence stop you from trying. But, and wait, let me, before I go into the but, and I will say that I try and I succeed in almost every circumstance. I find a way. If I'm on my own and I'm facing down Japan on my own, I always find a way. Except, and here's back to the but, except if I'm with my wife, in which case I fold up the shop, right? When I'm on my own, when I go out into on my own into Japan, I'm open for business. I'm like Lucy, you know, from Peanuts with the box that says the doctor is in. And in my case, the foreigner is in. The struggling foreigner is in. And I face everyone and every circumstance head on. I hardly even use my app. I don't look up words. I just struggle with my limited vocabulary, and I piece together phrases which must be torturous for the Japanese natives to hear me try to speak. And my good nature and my efforts always seem to see me through. They always do. And that's the compliment that my daughter offered me. She said that that's something that I do. But, and this is so glad I'm having this talk right now with myself. When I'm with my wife, to a lesser degree my daughter, but principally my wife, Lucy doesn't come out and unfold the shop. I kind of step behind my wife and I let her lead for me, which feels terrible. It's very unadulting. I could think of other words, but that's a good word to describe it. It's unadulting. And I'm very proud of being a competent adult. And it not only to that, it extends to other things as well. So let me explain the incident that happened yesterday that facilitated all of these thoughts. Yesterday was the long-awaited day for my interview to get my driver's license, my Japanese driver's license. This was a half-year process to get here. Literally started this in the spring, and now we're almost to the end of summer. So a good quarter of a year then. We had to go in, assemble lots of, it was half a year because I had to go all the time to assemble all the paperwork, make the case, like making an argument to a judge that, you know, Japan should please reissue my Japanese driver's license rather than requiring me to go through the test to get it again. Because, and here's my case, I was out of the country when my old driver's license expired, my old Japanese driver's license expired. I couldn't possibly have renewed it. I'm not making a case that's new to the Japanese system. This is a provision that Japan has in place to allow petitioners to get a license reissued. So I'm just following their procedures. But it's a long and complicated process. And about 3 months ago, we had the event at the driving center in the other side of town to come before the auditors and have them look at the documents to see that we had a case. They then took those documents and spent 3 months reviewing those documents to ascertain if we have the case. And I'm watching this show right now on Netflix. I don't watch a lot of dramas, but I'm trying to learn how to enjoy TV. It's called Mo. It's about a Palestinian refugee family in the United States, and they're having this situation where it's taking years to get, like 22 years in a limbo status to get in front of a judge to try to make a case for asylum status in the United States. And these big dates, these court dates come and they get pushed off, etc. And they finally get the audience with the judge, and they're in the wrong friggin' building. Turns out there's room 19, but there's room 19. An incompetent clerk told them room 19. They're in building A. There's also a building B. So they weren't in the hearing wasn't going to be in room 19A. It was being held in 19B, the next building over. So so they're suddenly realizing that their hearing window had come and gone in the next building. This is so. That's exactly what happened to me yesterday. So my big hearing day was yesterday. And I had this documents that incompetent me, this manila folder that they had given me 3 months ago to take home with my appearance information on, clearly labeled right on the front. Now, I had gone into my phone in Google Calendar and marked the date and put the time in as 1 p.m. Now, last week, as we approached this important date yesterday, my wife, who trusts me, no reason that she shouldn't, I've always been a reliable husband and father and provider and, man of the house. I've always could be trusted to follow through and, put food on the table and make decisions that needed to be made in cooperation with my wife, sometimes alone, etc. No reason for her to doubt my competence. Last week, she asked me, what time is our hearing? And I said, it's 1 o'clock. Trusting me, not thinking anything else, fine and dandy. Yesterday, around 11 o'clock, we started to put things together to go out to have lunch and then go to the place. And I had put the manila folder with the paperwork on the Genkan, on the top there, the table above where the shoe locker is. And Yumiko looked at it, and clearly it says right on the front in Japanese, the date and the time of 8:30 a.m. Now my wife, ever the diplomat, apprehended in a moment, in an instant, we had missed our chance because it was 11:30 then. And in her very diplomatic manner, had simply said, "Did you notice the time measure is 8:30?" She didn't say anything like, "Hey, idiot, we missed our appointment." She very diplomatically said, trusting me, "Did you see that the time is 8:30?" And I said, "Wow, well, I've got it written down as 1. Immediately, my heart sank. We both knew we were finished. I had missed the chance, we had missed the appointment due to my incompetence, my gross incompetence. Nevertheless, we put everything together. We got in the car. We went to the center, whole ride in silence. Got there, went to the window. We were there early, and the window was all, closed up, curtains. And nevertheless, there was one couple sitting there, and we were there early. So we sat, and at 1 o'clock, the windows opened. A lot of people had arrived by then, people with their appointments. And the clerks, very, very, Japanese, bureaucrats they can be very, stern and sober, but they can also be very accommodating. And they immediately I gave them the paperwork, gave them the full, I didn't know what I was doing. This is where the real depth of my gross incompetence comes out, and I'm kind of turning to my wife to talk to them because I'm flustered, I'm upset, etc. I gave them the piece of paper. They noted the time I'd missed the window. They took it, nevertheless, they took all the paperwork away. We thought maybe they'll give us a chance. Eventually, the head clerk came around and very, very nicely told us that they just had too many, we'd missed the chance. They had too many people on the docket this afternoon, and we'd have to reschedule for October. And she was even so accommodating as to ask, how long does my international driver's license work? And I said until December. So she was even considerate of that. She was really trying to find a way. She did literally above and beyond. And Yumiko, remembers, she was the same woman that helped Yumiko get her license in the same circumstance. And Yumiko had the same flattering words to share about that circumstance with Yumiko too, because Yumiko's California driver's license was going to expire the next week when Yumiko was doing at the same stage of her thing, and the woman jumbled things around and got Yumiko in before it expired. So kudos to her, she's great. Anyway, so back to the point of gross incompetence. This isn't story time, except to the extent of giving you the foundation, understanding about what happened. So we're on track. I've got a new court date, and I won't blow this one. But that really ruined the whole day in terms of my sense of goodwill, my sense of well-being. Just even a few slight changes would have adjusted all of this. A little voice was inside my head last week telling me, "Kurt, that 1 o'clock doesn't sound right. 1 o'clock doesn't sound right." Now, if I didn't have my wife Kalina, and I am in no way blaming my wife for anything. Don't ever get that idea. I'm simply saying that with her around, it's like having a, a big sister, right? That is capable, not grossly incompetent. But if she's not around and I'm left to my own devices, I do things differently. Like I said before, I rise to every challenge on my own. Again, I'm not blaming my wife. But if I had not had her around, I probably would have dug out that paperwork. And even though I can't read Japanese, I can read a little bit. I've gone through it and tried to figure out stuff to try to make sure, right? I would have seen clearly on the label, right on the top, the date and the time was there. They made it clear for idiots like me to be able to figure it out. I didn't do that. I didn't do that at all. And I know why. Because I rely on my big sister, my wife, and I'm ashamed of my incompetence. And doing things like that in the face of being together with my wife only exacerbates my sense of incompetence. And I told my Yumiko once before, I said, you'd be surprised how much Japanese I can use, how much Japanese I actually speak when I'm not around my family, when I'm on my own. And it's because I rely on them. Again, not blaming anybody at all. I'm the one to blame. This is very edifying to say these things out loud because it's helping me to realize my path forward. So the good news is we have our path forward for this. We have a new court date. We'll go back. But the thing was, and this was the real shocker, I realized something in this circumstance yesterday that I had been hiding for years, for more than a decade. That the reason that I left Japan, the primary reason I left Japan all those years ago, was to escape this gross incompetency, which was far more acute 11 years ago when I was working and raising a daughter and participating in all that entailed. And I had to rely on my wife more often, and sometimes my daughter more often than. And I ran away to America where I am a native and I could operate as a native and not be so seemingly incompetent. Indeed, in America, I rose to the occasion, succeeded in my career. Of course, I succeeded as a father and a husband operating in those roles because I was in my native environment, right? Yumiko, I've even heard Yumiko say a couple of times, she would say, since we've come back, she says, I'm so used to you taking care of absolutely everything, Kurt, that it's hard she was talking about how it's hard for her to get her hand or her mind around the fact that she has to do stuff here because I did everything in the United States. And now I do next to nothing. And that's a burden for my wife and a humiliation for me. That's why I left. I left for success, and I left principally to escape my gross incompetency. Now, so I noted that I faced the real reason I left, and this is very edifying insofar as now I know. Now I know that I didn't come back from Japan with a clean sheet. I didn't slay the dragon that I left Japan for. The dragon is still here. That's good to know. Now I know part of the reason why I've had a good deal of restlessness in the last 7 months since I've come back, because I still have the dragon. Now, before I go on to what I'm going to do about it, I want to point out that I handled the above pretty well. That's the second line here. It says I faced the real reason I left and I handled it really well. In the moment yesterday when all this was happening, I was one step ahead of every emotion the whole time. I was having an awful day, yet I was one step ahead. I was not letting this experience get the better of me. I went silent, pretty much stayed silent most of the day. My wife knows that my silence, because I've told her this, my silence does not mean that I'm upset at anybody. It means that I'm maybe trying to weather a storm inside my head, and I don't want to involve anybody else. I just want to get through it. Sometimes time is all it needs. And she's very willing and patient in acquiescing and giving me that. I still function. I still do all the stuff I need to do, but I just don't talk to anybody. it works. It works very well. It's hashtag Temperance to prevent the hashtag Feast of Offal, right? Giving it, because if I start talking, I might start saying stuff that might hurt other people, might be more expressions of emotions that I'm just spewing out onto others that don't really represent what's going on inside. I would much rather just simply not talk until I'm in this state where I can talk and look at things more objectively and not have everything tinted with emotion. I handled that really, really well. Man, I'm going to give myself. It was a 0-star day in terms of competency, which is the whole point of this description. But I got 5 stars in terms of how I handled it. So I handled it really well. So now on to the question of what am I going to do about this? Well, not a lot. You know, there's 2 ways that I'm to handle this. One is to address my incompetency, and 2 is to operate within my limits, accept my incompetency, right? And I'm already doing both. In terms of addressing the incompetency, that comes through engaging with the culture, and people and society and opportunities. And I actively do that. I don't shy away from Japan. In fact, I'll be finishing this up in just a moment to walk up the street and join my neighbor's Sans wife, just me, for our daily morning exercise. I talk to the neighbors, I get to know everybody. I'm engaged in this stuff. I am actively engaged in the community. I don't think I really need to work on that. I could work on my language, but that's true. And I might start working on addressing some of my vocabulary, improving my vocabulary and my listening. But I think I'm doing pretty good on that. The second one, and the more interesting one in terms of utilizing my values in my book, is the ability to recognize my limits and decide where I want to accept what limits that exist. Because a lot of the weight is gone, right? I'm no longer working. I'm no longer working for somebody else, and I'm no longer raising a kid. So a lot of the weight, which presents the opportunities for me to feel, grossly incompetent, is lifted, and I might be able to just accept that. So that's how I'll handle that, and I'm pleased. I'm okay with that. I'll give it some more thought. It's only been 24 hours. Okay, on to the creed. My creed consists of 8 objectives, and these are to be always ready to die, to make good and effective use of time, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, to cultivate good emotional reactions, to perform good actions relative to my values, to recognize my true limits and true opportunities, to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, and to maintain my balance. And for today, I'm going to read the principle titled Complete Oblivion. I think yesterday I did Sin and Damnation. Yeah, there it is. Complete Oblivion. Principle number 27 on page 270 of Going Alone. Sub-principles. Remember, complete oblivion. All gone. Sub-principles. No final reunion, no final reconciliation, and no final justice. And a quote from the Bible, no less. Job 14:12. So man lieth down and riseth not, till the heavens be no more. They shall not awake, not be raised out of their sleep. My words. Soon the light within the mind will wink out. My life will come to an end. The storehouse of my memory will lose its electricity, which is the means of its maintenance and growth. The columns of my mental library and lyceum will quickly crumble and fall. The roof cave in. The foundations turn to sand. The philosopher is gone, evaporated to atoms. There will be then no last reunion with loved ones, no reconciliation of hard, careless, or misspoken words, no satisfaction of wanting justice. The whole thing simply blows away with the new morning's breeze. So the principle of complete oblivion is my reminder that after death comes nothing, just an oblivion that will last and endure forever. The mortal composition of my body will dissolve away to its components and then atoms and be reused elsewhere. But what I am will be no more forevermore. It's a sobering perspective, and one that lends urgency to the efforts and acts of living well in the moments that we have remaining. As for today, today it's a Friday. I have a full day of work ahead of me. I'm going to basically be a full day in my new paradigm of operation. I'll finish here in just a moment. I'll read comments, then I'll list items. I'm going to list this beautiful Caledon Glaze modern inspired sake cup. I will do the photography for that, and I will also do the photography for a new bag of Japanese senbei that will go in my store, making use of this beautiful soft light, which is about to burst through the clouds. I better hurry up, because when the light comes, it gets a little harsh and cloying. And then I'll carry on with the day. I'll go to the post office in the afternoon. I'll spend time with my wife. It'll make a day of it. As for comments, good morning, Ray. 20C, 58 degrees. Here it is 25C and 70 degrees. You can see we're just in the green. It feels like heaven right now. Definitely does. It's going to get hot though soon. Good to see you, Ray. Hi, Tim. 17.2 C and 75% humidity up there in England. Nice. 17.2. Nice temperature and 75. Very nice, actually. Hi, Evelyn. I'm at work, but I look forward to catching up later. Looking forward. Thank you, Evelyn. Hi, Michael. Ray says this is where being prior military helps. Most of us get anxiety if we aren't 15 minutes early to everything, which aligns with Japanese businesses. Definitely. Sorry you missed your appointment. Everything is so much paperwork and time consuming. Yeah, it is. Tim says, I think if there is a language barrier, no matter what country, it can be very easy to become cocooned in a bubble. Easy option. So being involved as much as possible in the community is a great way to increase the confidence and overcome any uncertainties or incompetencies. Well spoken, Tim. Thank you. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and get my... Ooh, there's a giant hornet right there. Right there. Right there. Do you see it flying off? Here it comes again. That's a Suzume Bachi right there. There it goes. I don't know if you guys saw it. Japanese giant hornet. I get visited every day. And yesterday we had 2 giant spiders in the house. That's what I get for leaving my screen door open all day. They just come in. I think they come in the laundry. They get up in the laundry, and then I come in and I fold the laundry, and then they come out and wander around the house. Anyway, have a great day. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. You too. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe, but not too safe. Bye bye. And you too, Evelyn. Have a good day. Talk to you later. And Ray, everybody. Bye bye.